to tell you how much I appreciate you. I know that you have, most of you have worked hard all day at a job and then come here and spend the evening, and night after night it gets tiring. I know that, and I'm grateful for your sacrifice. And I think it's maybe important for you to know that nobody who's participating in this gets paid. In fact, one guy told me you ought to have to pay to preach that, and some of us are doing that. We are paying to be able to do this. I know Doug drives with his family an hour and a half to get here to be a part of this. And Nathan flew himself in and buys his own food. Nobody's giving him anything. So I want you to know, we care enough about you and the input of being together in the body and letting Jesus do something to us and together as a corporate body, that we're willing to do those kind of sacrifices, at least, to have this happen and experience this with you. So I appreciate your kindness and participation. And so I know you worked all day and you're tired, and if you need to sleep now, help yourself. So I want to go to Matthew chapter 28 again. We started with this on Sunday night, and I want to go back to these three stories. You will remember that in Matthew chapter 28, there are these three occasions, the resurrection of Jesus taking place, and Matthew, and you can't correspond this, you can't weave this into the other gospel accounts, because Matthew does his own thing with this. And chronologically, you can't establish it. I've never been able to put it all together, but it doesn't matter, because Matthew's writing with a distinct point and trying to say something very distinctly. And he gives us the story of the ladies. The angel comes down, and the ladies get to see the angel and all that takes place in the first story. We're calling that the angel's descension. Angel comes down, earthquakes, and the guards pass out, and the ladies get in on seeing the empty tomb. And then you move to the second story, which begins in verse 11. The soldiers that have passed out for fright have awakened, and they have gone back into Jerusalem, and they are reporting to the chief priest everything that happened. It makes a definite statement that they reported to the chief priest, if you'll note in verse 11, all the things that had happened. So the angel coming down, the bright lights, the passing out, all of that, these guards, who were probably 12 of them, they reported all of this to the chief priest. And you get their reaction to all of this and what they thought they ought to do about it. And then you have the final story, which is verse 16 down through verse 20, which is the story of the 11 disciples who have now come to the mountain, which was an appointment by Jesus, because they were told to go there. And Jesus shows up in his resurrection presence and gives them a great mission to go out and win the world. And the Great Commission is given to us in these verses, as Jesus says in verse 18, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. There is an interesting theme that weaves its way through these three stories that I want to try to briefly present to you tonight. If you can get the picture, the resurrection has not taken place in the mind and the heart of these two ladies. And when you go to the first story, the two ladies are, according to verse 1, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. And God had done so much through Jesus into the lives of these two ladies, had literally revolutionized them. Mary Magdalene, of course, was full of 7 demons, and Jesus cast those demons out of her, and she was made brand new. And Mary Magdalene, she got her last name Magdalene from the town of Magdala. And the town of Magdala was like, well, it would be something parallel to Las Vegas. When I say Las Vegas to you, you immediately think of gambling. Hey, I'm going to Las Vegas. Hope you make a lot. See, because you immediately think of gambling, because Las Vegas is identified with that. Well, Magdala was identified with prostitution. So when you said you were Mary Magdalene, you were making a statement about who you are and where you come from And what kind of, and she was full of 7 devils. Come on. You can imagine she was raised in all of that, what kind of woman she was. Jesus had done something so phenomenal in her life that her life was just switched upside down. And she was in love with him as a redeemer and as a life changer for her existence. And she was following when it was not proper for women. She's never called a disciple. She was probably more of a disciple to Jesus than the men were, but it wasn't proper to call her one. And she's been following Jesus all this time. She has big dreams of what he's going to do. She's heard him preach. It's the idea of conquering, and it's the idea of success, and he's going to change the world, and she wants to be in on that because she knows what he's done in her life and now what he's going to do in the world itself. And so she's loyal and she's faithful and she loves and she cares, but she was there when he died. She had been at the crucifixion. She no doubt had hung around with Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well, and she had watched him die and the suffering and the agony and everything he went through and the defeat of the whole thing. And here she is. She's moaning inside. She's groaning. She's full of grief. She can't sleep at night. She doesn't fix her hair. She doesn't care about makeup. She's just destituted. She's just torn up. She can't stand what's going on. Her Jesus that has been so good to her has not been successful. He's dead. She watched him die. And then on top of it, she didn't get to do the responsibility, the things she wanted to do. Because you see, when he died on a cross on Friday, by the time he died, it was nearly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Nicodemus had to go and get permission. Joseph of Arimathea had to go get permission to get his body down off the cross. And the Sabbath day starts at 6 on Friday through 6 on Saturday. So they've got a 2-hour slot here to get that body down and put spices on it and get it embalmed for burial, get it ready for burial. And they quickly do a job. It's just a touch-up job, and wrap him in these clothes and take him down to the tomb, get him in, pull the peg, and the stone comes down. And now they got it all done just before the Sabbath day starts, because you can't do any of those things on the Sabbath day. And now she's worried because they didn't do a proper job in the burial procedure. They didn't get to have the funeral rites. They didn't do the stuff that should have been done in honor and respect for the one she loves so much. So can you see her? It's the crack of dawn. Luke says she's carrying spices that she prepared. Mark says she's just carrying spices, but they were probably weighed nearly 100 pounds. So between the two ladies, they're lugging these spices to come down. And how are they going to get into the tomb? They have no plan, man. They're out of their mind in misery. You know, Jesus is deader than a doornail. What are they going to do? They're going to come down to a tomb. It's sealed by a Roman seal. There's not a chance in the world they're going to get in. The guards are there. What are they? But they're coming. They don't know what else to do. So at the crack of dawn, they're making their way to this tomb, hoping somehow, some way to get in and touch up his body and redo the spice thing and make it adequate for his burial in respect for him because Jesus is dead. Now, I don't know what you think about the ladies, but their theology is terrible. See, they think he's dead and he's alive. They think he failed and he succeeded. They think he's conquered and he's victorious. I mean, I don't want them teaching a class at our center. You know, what on earth did they teach? They're so off the wall. Their theology is twisted and unreal and not proper. And here they are, they're coming, and you know what happens to them? Well, you can follow it in the scriptures. In verse 2, the first thing that happens to them is that there is an angel that comes down, and he is so powerful in his descent that an earthquake takes place, and they got right in the middle. Think of this. They got right in the middle of a descending angel with this brilliant light that nearly blinded everybody, and an earthquake that was caused by the power of the descent of this angel. And this angel walked over, grabbed a hold of this stone, yanked it out of its slot, flipped it down, and it rolled down, flopping and dust everywhere. And finally, when it settled, the angel goes over and sits on it like he says, "We win." This is like putting your foot on the chest of the guy you just knocked out. And the angel saying, "We win." It's a victorious statement. And these ladies got in on that. Their theology is awful. They are absolutely off the wall. They don't believe the right things. They think Jesus is dead when he's really alive. And they got in the middle of an angel descending. That's not fair. See, any way you slice that, that's not fair. See, I've given my whole life to this, and I have proper theology, and I've studied hard, brother. And I believe that Jesus is alive, and I know who he is, and my theology is dead on. And I never got to see an angel. That's not fair. Any way you slice it. In fact, it gets worse. Go on with this. As you move on, you go to verse 5. The angel actually turns to the ladies and says, "Don't be afraid. I know you seek Jesus who was crucified." Hey, I know you seek Jesus and you think he's dead. I know that. See, the angel knows this. And then the angel said, "He's not here, for he is risen. He is, as he said, come and see the place where the Lord..." Get in here. See the empty tomb. Come on in. So the ladies, these ladies that have terrible theology are the first ones to go into the tomb and inspect and see that Jesus is not there. He is alive. He has escaped out of the tomb that had a Roman seal on it. Their theology is off. I know. But they got into the middle of an angel coming down, an earthquake, bright lights. They were the first ones to go in and see the empty tomb. Again, I tell you, not fair. My theology is dead on. I've studied hard. I've given my life to this. I've served Jesus all my life. This is just, I never got to see an angel. I never got on an earthquake caused by God. And I didn't get to even visit the empty tomb. Never even been to Israel. Nathan has. He's privileged. See, it's just not fair. It's just. I mean, if God was going to select someone to get in on this, it ought to be. And it gets worse. You'll note in verse 7, these angels with all this bad theology, the angel says, "Go quickly, tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and indeed he's going before you into Galilee, and there you will see him. Behold, I have told you." So the angels are the first ones to receive a call from God to go tell disciples that they ought to behave themselves and go to Galilee and meet the Christ. So they're going to be the first ones to express the resurrection of Jesus. These ladies who think he's dead. These ladies who theology is terrible. These ladies, they look a mess. These ladies are going to go tell men. What to do? There's just something that isn't right about this. And all I got to say is, not fair. I've worked like a dog to get my theology correct and to do the right thing, and I never got in on an angel, and I never got to go into the empty tomb, and God didn't tap me on the show. I didn't get to be the first ones to verbalize the wonder of his resurrection. What spatial talent did they have? What qualified them? Out of all the people, and again, Mary Magdalene, 7 devils, a prostitute. You'd think you'd pick some decent person like me. See, what is this? What was the talent? What qualified them? Why did God say, oh, they're the ones I want? What was it? Well, there's only one thing going on. They're seeking. See, they got up out of bed at the crack of dawn. They had no idea what they're doing. They didn't know how it was going to work out. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have a strategy of how they were going to pull this off. And they're trying to really pull off something they can't pull off. And so they got up out of bed, and at the crack of dawn, they lugged the spice, and they made their way down. And because they were seeking, they went after this thing. They said, hey, I haven't got it all figured out. The theology is terrible, but they went after this, and because they were on the move and they were seeking, it qualified them. Wouldn't it be something, now don't spread this around, but wouldn't it be something if God didn't care about your theology? Wouldn't it be something if God didn't care whether you were dumber than a rock about the Bible? Wouldn't it be interesting if God didn't care if you were a little flaky? Wouldn't it be something if the one single thing he's after in your life is that you just go after him? That you just get up at the crack of dawn, man, and you haven't got it figured out, and you don't know all there is to it, and you don't know how to do it all, and you don't know when to stand, you don't know when to sit, and you don't know the songs, and you can't figure out all and you've got questions that you don't have answers to, and you don't know exactly what is and what isn't, and if he is and if he isn't, and you can't figure, but hey, I'm going after Jesus, and I'm going to open up my life to him, and all my resistance is coming down, and while I can't figure it all out, and I don't know all what's on the page, man, I'm going after him, and Jesus, do you know what he would do in your life if you just seek, if you just open up, if you just say, hey, here I am, if you just say, hey, I'm in, Jesus, if you would just seek. Is that what he's wanting? Now, the third story is interesting as well, because there's 11 disciples, and you realize the 11 disciples are as bad as in confusion as the ladies are, because see, they think he's dead as well. Now, I know other gospels, other resurrection appearances, you get all that, but in Matthew's gospel, see, they don't have a clue. In Matthew's gospel, they are in Jerusalem and they are scared to death. In Matthew's gospel, they are trembling. Hey, they were at the Garden of Gethsemane. They were there when the soldiers came. It scared the wadding out of them, man. In fact, they scattered like rats. They weren't even at the crucifixion. John may have been. John was. But hey, the rest of them weren't. Peter followed afar off. He saw Jesus taken into Caiaphas' palace, the mock trial. They didn't see all that was going on. They heard the rumors, no doubt, that Jesus' beard was yanked out by its roots and that he was mutilated, that they had a demonic, these people, these Caiaphas and his men, they had a demonic fit and just beat Jesus nearly half to death in that mock trial. We call it a mock trial because it was held at night, and they condemned a man to death at night, and you cannot do that by Jewish law. So they waited till the next morning, had a 5-minute trial, rubber stamped what they did that night, drug him down the stairway, took him off to Pilate. See, the disciples are not there. They don't know what's going on. They hear about it. The Barabbas Jesus thing, the scourging, oh, come on. They have literally beat him nearly to death. He should have died in all of that. You've seen the scene. And they take him out and nail him to a tree. The disciples aren't there. Why? They're scared to death, people. Scared of what? Well, maybe the soldiers will get us. If that's what they did to Jesus, they're certainly looking for the disciples as well. So they have run like rats. They're hiding out. And these women, can you see them? They come running probably up the stairs of the upper room. I have no idea, but maybe running up the stairs of the upper room, coming in and bursting through the door to the disciples who are scared to death of every creak on the stairway. And these women come bursting through the door and they say, he's alive, he's alive, we've seen him, and he wants you to come to Galilee and meet him. Now, 11 guys are going to look at these two ladies and going to say, oh, brother. They're having emotional fits. Call them in dressed in white. They flipped out. They're having visions. Did you see little green men too? Come on. There's no way we're going to listen to these ladies. But they insist. And so the disciples discuss, well, we want to go to Galilee anyhow, because this whole thing is over. Jesus is dead. The whole thing is done. Let's go back fishing. How far is Galilee? 80 to 100 miles. We got to walk. It's going to take 5 to 10 days. Well, at least we'd get out of Jerusalem, this big city, and the threat of the guards and all of that. Let's do it. So can you see them packing their bags? Hey, getting their backpack ready. They're heading out, and they're taking the journey. And they're doing what the women said. They're going to go to the mount. Yeah, we'll go. Bug off. We're going. And so they show up at this mountain, and they're hanging around. And what are we going to? Hey, we're wasting our time. What we'll stay here today. Hey, this is the day we were supposed to be here, so we'll be here. And then Jesus shows up. But get what it says. Verse 17. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Some doubted. Bunch of flakes. After all Jesus has said, come on. After all Jesus has said, after all he taught them, after all the miracles he did, after all the divine action, and now they see the resurrected Lord and they're saying, I'm not sure. Now, if I'd have been Jesus, I'd have looked at him and said, hey, just struck your name off the list. You're gone. I'll find somebody else. I didn't think you were good looking anyway. These guys, these 11 guys, are a bunch of flakes. And you know what Jesus did? He looked at the bunch of flakes and said, I don't care. All authority's been given to me in heaven and on earth. And guys, I know you've never been more than 100 miles away from your own hometown. But I'm telling you, I'm calling you to be a world evangelist. And I want you to pack your bags and hit the streets, boys. And I'm telling you, you're going to go into all the nations. And this bunch of flakes, but they're flakes. They doubt. I know. They haven't got their act together. I know. They have not had the seminary course. But Jesus didn't care. Why would he pick a bunch of flakes like these guys who are doubting after all they've been through? They're still doubting. Why would he pick a bunch of flakes and send them out to win the world? Like they got some kind of plan, like there's some big talent they got, like they're organized entrepreneurs. Why would he pick them? They were seeking. They came from Jerusalem all the way to Galilee and said, we're not sure, but hey, here we are. Wouldn't it be interesting if Jesus doesn't care much about whether you doubt or not? Whether you've got some questions you can't figure out or not? Wouldn't it be interesting if, well, I'd get in the back of my mind, I wonder. Wouldn't it be interesting if he doesn't give a rip about that? Well, wouldn't it be interesting if the only thing he really wants out of you is, hey, would you go after him? Would you open up? Would you get up at the crack of dawn, and would you get the spices, and you don't know what you're going to do or how it's going to work out, and you think he's dead, and you don't have proper theology, and you make your way? Would you get up from your upper room where you're scared to death, and would you walk out the door, and would you put down all the resistance, and would you just walk your way to Galilee and say, I don't know where all this is going, and I don't know where it's going to end up, and I don't know about all this Jesus and how he is and what he is, and I haven't got it all figured out, but man, I'm here, and I'm open. Would you just? Now, there is a middle story in between all of this. And it's an interesting story because it's about the guards coming to the leaders of Israel. And it's the very opposite of the picture that I've just described for you. In fact, if you go to all of chapter 8 or 28 is a spill out from the end of chapter 27. And if you go to the end of chapter 27, verse 62, you will note that it says, on the next day which followed the day of preparation. And that would be the Sabbath day. So the day of preparation was the day to get ready for the Sabbath day. And then there is the Sabbath day. The chief priests gathered together with Pilate, saying, so they came all the way over to Pilate's on the Sabbath day. Now get this. On the Sabbath day, they've made more than a Sabbath day's journey, which broke their Sabbath day law. But this is important. We got to get to Pilate and talk to him. We crucified Jesus. He's dead. They buried him. But see, they got this rumor going on around. They've been hearing that in 3 days he's going to come forth from the dead. So we got to lock this thing down. We just can't take a chance. So they have made their way on the Sabbath day, breaking their Sabbath day rule. They've gone into Pilate's palace, which they didn't do for the crucifixion. They stood outside. Now they've gone into the palace, which is against their Jewish law, because if you go into a Gentile house, who knows what those Gentiles have been doing in there, it'll get all over you. So there's this defilement thing going on, so they can't go into the house, but they've made that exception. They've broken their Sabbath day law, they've broken their defilement law, and they've come into, because this is really important, and they said to Pilate in verse 63, we remember that while he was still alive, how that deceiver, that's what they called Jesus, he's a deceiver. After 3 days I will rise. Therefore, what we're asking, Pilate, is that you command the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say to the people, he's risen from the dead. And if that happens, the last deception will be worse than the first. How could the last deception be worse than the first? Well, first you had Jesus running around saying, I'm the Messiah and you can be redeemed. Now we'd have a Jesus from the dead running around. And we just can't have this. So lock this thing down. So you know what Pilate said? Pilate said, you have a guard. Go your way. Make it as secure as you know how. Hey, do whatever you want to do. Want a seal? How about 2? Would you go for 3? Want 4 guards? How about 12? Hey, whatever you want. Lock that thing down. And you can be rest assured they did. And what's their main concern? Deception. Now, deception is an interesting thing. The word itself suggests 2 ideas. One is that you're led astray. That there's somebody, it means to be led astray. There's somebody, number one, somebody who wants to lead you astray. There is somebody who wants to, there is a mastermind who's out to get you, who wants to trip you up, who wants to feed you fake news, and he's running for office. And he wants to deceive you. He wants to lead you astray. So that's number one. But number 2 in this word, deception, is not only is there someone who wants to lead you astray, you are willing to be led. You're willing to be fooled. Why are you willing to be fooled? Because it fits your agenda. It fits your self-centered desires. So here's a bunch of leaders of Israel who have had truth all over them. And what are they doing? They're being led astray. Why? Because it fits their agenda. And they're willing to break their Sabbath day law. They're willing to break their defilement law to nail this thing down so it doesn't go any further. Now, get the scene of our passage then in chapter 28. The guards who have just passed out for fright have come out of their faint. And now that they're awake, they run into Jerusalem. They get the chief priest and they meet with the leaders of Israel. And they tell them, it says, remember, all the things that had happened in verse 11, at the end of verse 11. All the things that had happened. What is that? All the things that happened. An angel came down. These are guards. These are not Christians. These are not disciples. These are not followers of Jesus. These are hard-nosed, elite, special force, best the Roman guard has, best the Roman army has. These are mean, tough, drink all night kind of guys. They've come out of this thing. Hey, bright lights, angel came down. We got so scared we passed out. When we woke up, the body is gone, and the angel was there talking to the ladies and said he's raised from the dead. And they reported everything that happened. What was the reaction of the leaders of Israel? Look at this thing. Verse 13. End of verse 12. They gave a large sum of money to the soldiers and said, tell his disciples, tell them, go around, tell everybody you know, his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. But if we do that, we'll be admitting we were sleeping on the job and we're overtaken by a bunch of disciples? Roman guards? Overpowered by a bunch of, come on, we can't do that. No, if verse 14, if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure. Hey, it'll be all right. If Pilate finds out about this and tries to come down on you, we'll come down on him. So your job is okay. No problem. So they took, verse 15, they took the money, did as they were instructed, and this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. So here's some soldiers come in to the leaders of Israel saying, bright lights, angels descend, whoa, earthquake, body's gone. The angel said he's raised from the dead. We saw it all, man. We got so scared we passed out. And the leaders of Israel said, hey, we'll pay you to lie. What do you call that? Deception. They're not seeking. You would think, wouldn't you, that they'd stop dead in their tracks and say, maybe we ought to consider the possibility that he really did raise from the dead. That he was really, no, we're not even going to consider it. Hey, shut the thing down, bribe him and pay him off. Let's end this thing. We're not buying in. Now you'll notice, they didn't get sent on a mission. They never saw the resurrected Jesus. Their lives weren't changed. Why? They're not seeking. They're not seeking. They're not seeking. Here's a bunch of flaky ladies who have wrong theology. They're seeking. Here's a bunch of disciples who are still doubting. They're seeking. They get in the middle of all this thing. God is changing their lives. They're sent on a world mission. Their lives begin to have purpose. They're on the move. Here's the leaders of Israel, educated, and they are, they're shutting down. They're locking down. In fact, it's interesting, the word, let me give you this, verse 12. It says, when they assembled with the elders and consulted together. Now, the word consulted together means to kind of put your head together, to come in. So they were always coming in. In other words, when this happened, they came in and they put their heads together and they turned in and said, what are we going to do about this? And then they decided by turning in. See, the ladies, they turned out. The disciples, they turned out. They went beyond themselves. Well, this is what we always know, but let's go beyond ourselves. You're sitting in a service like this. God is speaking to your life. And an altar call is given, for instance. And you feel deep inside, I ought to open up to Jesus. Haven't got it all figured out. Got some doubts. But I ought to open up to Jesus and just seek him and let him do something in my life. Let him show me. You feel that inside. So what do? Well, you turn inside your mind and say, should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? And your mind tells you, nah, I'm not ready for that. Hey, I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to risk that. Don't know what people will say, and I'm not ready to go there. So you don't come. A couple years go by. You're sitting in a service like this. God moves. You feel in your heart. Yeah, you're drawn. You turn into your mind. Should I or shouldn't I? And when you turn into your mind says, nah, you're not ready. This is not the time. There's some stuff you want to do. Come on. So you don't respond. Now, a few years go by, 10, 15. Now you're 50. You're sitting in a service like this. God moves upon you. You feel this, and in your mind, you turn into your mind, and your mind says, nah. And you don't respond. A few years go by. You're 75. You're sitting in a service like this. You feel in your heart, oh, I ought to. You turn into your mind says, nah, not tonight, you're not ready. So you don't respond. Now you're 85. Now you're 95. God moves. You turn into your mind. Your mind tells you the same thing. I'm not ready. When do you think your mind is going to say, oh, you're ready? It isn't. That's the deception. See, you got to break with the patterns. See, I've always shut down. I've always locked it down. I've always said, hey, get the money, pay the guards, spread the lie. That's the deception. See, if I rely on what I've always done and what I've always been, I never will. I've got to break with the way I've always been, break with the way I've always thought, break with the way I've always responded. And I've got to get up out of my bed at the crack of dawn, get the spices, and go to the tomb. I've got to get up out of the upper room. I've got to march on my way on my way to Galilee and meet him at the base of the mountain. And I got doubts. I know that. And hey, I haven't got it all figured out. I get that. But I'm not going to turn in. I'm going to turn out. I'm going to go beyond who I am, beyond myself. And I'm going to seek. And if you will seek, an angel will come down. Bright lights. You get to go into the tomb. You get to see the resurrected Lord. And in spite of your doubts and your bad theology, he will send you on great missions. And what's the one thing he's after? Would you just quit putting up the walls? Would you just quit blockading? Would you just unlock the door? Boy, I'm knocking. Would you just open up? Jesus, you're something. See, all the things that I think are so important, correct theology, training, knowing the process, talent, good looks, all the stuff that you don't seem to care about. You're looking for anybody, any place, anywhere who will just say, hey, I haven't got it all figured out. Got a lot of doubts. I probably don't have right theology. I probably have some ideas that are off the wall. But man, I'm in. I'm coming, Jesus. I'm open. I'm going to turn outside myself, break the patterns I've always had. And I'm seeking you. Heads are bowed. He's talking to you. I know you haven't got it all figured out. I know you got doubts. I know. Well, maybe it's just an emotional whip up by some loudmouth preacher. I know. And hey, you can shut it down, man. You can shut her down. And you can be what you've always been. Do what you've always done. Bribe the guards. Go on with the lie. Would you risk stepping outside yourself? Would you risk seeking? Would you risk an openness? Would you set aside doubts? Would you set aside, well, don't set them aside, bring them with you, but would you come in spite of all the blockades in your life, all the stuff that you've experienced in the past, all the religious things you've gone through, all the times you've been to an altar and it didn't work? Would you, come on, guys, would you go beyond all of that? Would you go beyond all the people who've tried to talk you into something that for self-centered agendas? Would you just go beyond all the abuse of the church? Would you just seek him? Would you just open? Would you just kneel before him? Would you just say, hey, what do you want to do in me? Is there an angel that can come down? Is there a resurrected Lord who will appear to me? Is there a call on my life? Ain't no pressure. But I'm telling you, Jesus is here, and the key ingredient for everything you're looking for in your life is found in seeking, responding, openness. Don't have to have it figured out. Your theology can be off. Would you seek him? Would you seek him? Moments of seeking. Be obedient.